Hello and welcome to Mike Drops the Mic. I'm Mike Lyman. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with former Miami Dolphin O.J. McDuffie. O.J. was drafted by the Miami Dolphins in 1993 with the 25th overall pick. He went to college at Penn State, and he played for legendary coaches Joe Paterno, Don Shula, and Jimmy Johnson. In 1998, McDuffie caught 90 passes, and he led the NFL in receptions. He has 415 career catches, which is fourth all-time in Dolphins history. Listen to OJ and I talk about his playing days, the current Miami Dolphins team, the Tua situation, and season predictions. Thank you and enjoy. So, OJ, you went to Penn State, and in 1993, you got drafted by the Miami Dolphins in the first round. What was your draft day like?
Man, draft day was great, actually. You talk about Penn State, our draft, not like these days where they have them on Thursday night, prime time for that first round. Our draft was Sunday afternoon, starting at noon. So I was in Penn State all weekend before they had their spring game that weekend. So I was actually, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, start right there. And so I left Penn State early Sunday morning, drove back from, let's be honest, partying all weekend at Penn State. To get ready for the draft at my mom's house up in Cleveland, man. And so driving over, it's only a few hour drive, but man, oh man, I was so tired from, just kicking and hanging out, man. But I knew it was obviously the biggest day of my life. It was pretty cool. I actually slept. I knew I wasn't going first pick, fifth pick, 10th pick. I knew I was supposed to be slated around 20. So I actually slept through like the first 15 picks of the draft. Because I was so tired. And then my mom woke me up. And that's how my draft day started off right there.
Did you think that you were going to the Dolphins? Like, did you suspect that, or were there any other teams you were like, maybe I might be going there?
No, I did. Dolphins hadn't even talked to me. The Dolphins hadn't even talked to me. And I think that's maybe they're, I don't know, hide me. I don't know. But I thought I was going to the 22nd pick. I thought I was going to San Diego. That's what all the intel was telling me. That's what my agent was talking about. And that's what where I thought I was going. And once 22 hit, and 23 hit and 24, I hadn't had a phone call yet, So then 25 hits and I get a call and it was Don Shula. I'm like, I didn't know I was, Dolphins are, on the radar. I was on the radar for the Dolphins. And sure enough, he said, how would I like to be a Dolphin? I'm like, his exact words were, would you like to be a Miami Dolphin? I'm like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? So, it was great, man. Because for me, I wanted to go close to home. I told you I'm from Cleveland. I wanted to play like somewhere, around Penn State. So that's Philly or maybe even Pittsburgh. Or I wanted to go warm. And I got warm. I got Marino. I got Shula. I hit the jackpot that day, bro.
Yeah. So real quick, what's interesting is I knew this and I was going to bring this up is you're originally high school, you're from the Cleveland area. Then you go to Penn State, which is middle of Pennsylvania. Then you come down here to Miami. I was born in Western Pennsylvania. I went to college in Cleveland at Cleveland State. And then I moved down here to Fort Lauderdale. So both of us kind of made similar transitions there. I thought that was funny.
And both those wanted to get the hell out of Ohio and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania too, didn't we?
We like the sunshine too much.
That's right.
So, you have to be one of the few people who have had the opportunity to play for such legendary coaches. Penn State, you're playing for Joe Paterno. You get drafted by Don Shula, who's in the Mount Rushmore for one of the greatest coaches of all time. And then even later in your career, you play for Jimmy Johnson when he comes down to Miami. How did those coaches differ in maybe their coaching styles, the way they motivate the players? What was it like being with essentially three of the greatest football coaches of all time?
Yeah, and you can add my Uncle Homer, who taught me everything, as one of his greatest coaches. And you can also add my high school coach, Cliff Walton, who is just an amazing head football coach as well. I was blessed, man. So blessed to be able to have the opportunity to learn from the best of the best and those different, like you talk about, those different levels of football. And in terms of comparisons, they're all great, obviously. They're all Hall of Famers, especially the guys that you talked about with Coach Paterno, Coach Shula, obviously Jimmy Johnson recently got in the Hall of Fame himself. And they all have different philosophies. Like in high school, Coach Walton never cursed. Nobody's allowed to curse. When I got to Penn State, Joe Paterno never cursed. Nobody was allowed to curse. But then when I got when I got to Miami, I was shocked at all the cursing that went on because I wasn't used to it, And of course, Jimmy's not afraid of a few, 4-letter words as well. But the philosophy is all the same, man. Accountability, hard work, all guys that are respected within their fields, and of course, get the respect from their team and their players, man. Very demanding. You talk about hard work. These dudes, when it comes to practices, I mean, it was unbelievable how hard they were, especially compared to today. I guess I know how much, especially in the NFL. I guess even in college too, how they've toned down some of the hours allowed to work on the field. A lot of it's more mental reps. I know the NFL are 2 days. I mean, one time I think Jimmy gave it. We had like 14 straight days of 2 days with Jimmy.
Wow.
With pads.
Yeah.
So you try that now with the NFLPA being involved. It's
they're
not happening, man.
No.
But just different philosophies, man. But for those three guys, though, they really were some pounders. They want you to hit, get physical, be physically tough, mentally tough. And that's how they rode their programs. They were trying to create the survival of the fittest, really, in my opinion, when it came to getting guys ready. And then on game day, game day was so much easier compared to practice because of that. We were able to go out there on game day and kind of relax because everything was so hectic and tense in practices.
Well, I've talked to a couple Steelers who played in the 70s, 80s. Chuck Noll was their head coach, and they said the exact same thing. They said, we couldn't wait for Sundays because it was so much easier than the practice week. They practice week, Chuck Noll's killing us. Then we go into game day. It's like, well, we just survived 4 or 5 days with the Steelers defense running 2 days. Let's go. It'll be a relaxing day playing the Jets or whoever it is. So, but yeah, that's just so crazy to me. I mean, most of the time I've heard stories of guys in the NFL. They're for a team and then they get traded to Patriots or a team like that where you have a legendary coach like Bill Belichick, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so different in the coaching philosophy and the mentality and the intensity going from where I was to where I am now with Bill. You were just blessed with these legendary coaches throughout your career. I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it really is, man. It is a blessing. That's the best way of putting it. We can choose our path early. My mom chose my high school and Coach Cliff Walton. We chose Penn State because of Joe Paterno. But then at that point, you're on your own, right? You're at the whim of the draft and where it might be. And sure enough, man, being able to, be coached by Coach Don Shula, it was just truly, truly a blessing, man. And Joe and Don are really good friends. And I'm sure that had some part to do with me getting the opportunity down in Miami.
Sure.
I'm sure he called Joe and, checked on, my character, my personality, my work ethic and everything. And obviously I think Joe gave me some pretty flying colors, man. So that's important as well, man. But I tell you, I mean, just to be able to go into the room and, be around those legends from the beginning. When Joe came to visit me at at Hawk in my high school, he didn't even talk to me. He sat there and signed autographs for everybody else the whole time.
Really?
We talked at the end for a little bit, and then he left. And so it was really, really cool the way he was with everybody else, and that's one thing I loved about Joe. Same thing with Coach Shula, and Jimmy's an all right guy at times, but he's a tougher little dude than anybody else that I dealt with.
Yeah. Well, under Jimmy, 1998, you lead the NFL in receptions. You got 90 receptions that season. How was that season different throughout your career? I mean, was that season, did you feel like there was a different connection between you and Marino and you just felt like everything was clicking? Or in that moment, how did that season feel?
Yeah, well, you know what? It was here's the funny part about it. 16 game schedule, right? 90 catches is nothing nowadays, obviously. But then it led the league. 8 games in, I only had 30 catches at that point. So I had 60 in the last 8 of that season, and that was a time we're on a playoff push. And Danny and I had already had a rapport. We're trying to get other guys involved. But then at that point, we're like, the hell with it, man. We got to just do what we got to do. And Danny really targeted me more than anything. I don't think we kept track of targets then. But I mean, I never had 19 targets like Cooper Kupp might have had the other day. But I know I had, quite a few targets and more opportunities because Danny had that trust factor. And that trust factor, it took a little time. But by then we were rolling. You know, 93 when I got drafted, of course, Penn State guy, it wasn't vibing very well. You know, I had to tell Dan, I said, look, man, it's not even college anymore, bro. We're good, man. We're on the same team now, you know?
Yeah.
But then we also had Urban Fryer and Keith Jackson, Keith Byers, Mark Ingram, Tony Martin. So it was very little opportunity for me to, you know, to get any opportunities on the field as an offensive guy. So I was just returning kicks. And then it just kept progressing. Our relationship and honestly, it came down to him knowing that I'm going to be where I'm going to be when I'm supposed to be there. And he knows I'm going to make the catch or at least make an attempt. And so his trust in me started growing over and over those years. In 98, we were just at the peak of what we were already doing.
Yeah. And when you just talked about how throughout the first 8 games, first off, it's different game now and then. You're running the ball more then, and you're not throwing a Cooper Cup 19 times. But you get 60 catches in the last 8 games, and did you actually have a conversation where you're like, feed me the ball, like let's win some games here? Was there any kind of conversation between you and Dan Marino that was actually, hey, let's win some games here, just keep feeding me the ball?
No, really, you know what? It happened naturally. You know, the game plan happened that way as well. Once it started clicking like that, they had me more involved in game plan. You know, we had some guys in that year that were good wide receivers, but the trust that Danny and I had, we've been together for so long. I mean, I think it just trumped all the other opportunities. And I tell you, there's some times where I come out of the huddle, I'm like, maybe Danny, you know, I got an opportunity over here. And so you put that bug in his ear, and then hell, he's going to look my side, even though he's supposed to look front side or back side first. He gives me an opportunity every single time. And most of the time we came up, we were solid together with him, man. So there was really no conversation. We had a silent, you know, almost like a read each other's mind type of communication when it comes to a lot of things, man, because we watch film together and we see certain things. It's amazing that, you know, we watch the film during the week and then we get out there on game day and we see what we saw, and all we got to do is look at each other. We know what we're doing. And that's how the relationship developed, and that's how the trust developed.
I like that you keep using the word trust, because that is such a big thing between quarterback and wide receiver. And you can tell when it's there, and you can also tell when there's a lack of trust.
Right.
So Dan Marino, that was your quarterback from when you got drafted in 1993. And what makes him different? He's also considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. What makes him different, not only as a player, but as a teammate? You're talking about the trust relationship, but what stood out to you?
Danny's work ethic was unbelievable. His will to win was unbelievable. And that's my will. That's the same way I am. I don't want to lose in anything. You know, that's my wife and my kids. I play my kids in some things, and my wife's like, why don't you let them win? What do you mean let them win? They got to earn these wins, you know? That's the way Danny was. That's the way I've always been. I grew up that way, you know, and within my family, we competed every single thing. And that's that same fight and that will, you know, that Western Pennsylvania attitude that Danny had as well, you know, growing up in that area, you know. And so it was pretty simple for me to go in and, you know, for us to be on the same page, because we had the same fight in us. We had the same dog in us. And that's important. Danny's competitiveness is second to none. I've seen the dude take some monster hits, sit in the pocket, you know what I mean, and get back up, you know what I mean, and just ready to compete some more. And that's what it's all about, man. So, I mean, my love for that man still to this day, man, is unbelievable because of his toughness, because of his mental toughness, his preparation for every game, his knowledge of the game. And the dude could read coverages like nobody's business, man, especially by the time I got there. I'm sure when he was younger that he was just a gunslinger and his arm strength helped him a lot. But by the time I got to him, his arm strength was still there. And also his reading the defenses and his ball placement was second to none. And that was just so much fun to work with.
Maybe not to the same degree, but are there any NFL players right now playing quarterback that remind you of the same playing style of Dan Marino?
Man, the game has changed so much. It really has. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know anybody that throws a prettier ball, tighter spiral, or, you know what I mean, that zip that Danny has right now. Most of these guys, you know, these RPO guys that can run. By the time I got to Danny, he had on 2 knee braces, an ankle brace, you know, eventually an Achilles brace. You know what I mean? So he was just going to sit in that pocket for the most part. but that's how much the game has changed. There are a couple guys in there, that's probably sitting there a little bit more, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and, probably Joe Flacco. But none of those guys had it like Danny. Maybe Tom has the closest thing to it. He still has that quick release, and obviously the success is a little different when it comes to the bigger picture. But man, just great guys like that are probably the best comparisons.
Gotcha. So 2022, new football season here. This is a big chapter for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Mike McDaniel's first head coach season. What do you think of the team so far?
I love everything for the most part that's going on. Obviously there's some things that are going on that, have nothing to do with what we're talking about with the team. But
yeah,
man, oh man, I mean, think about this right now. I don't know when this is going to air, Mike, but 3-1. Who thought we'd be 3-1 right now? People are saying, 0-4, 1-3, 2-2 at best, and now we're 3-1. I just love the way that he has this great relationship with the team. You got a young guy that actually understands what's going on with these kids and can relate to these kids. And I call them kids because they're all half my age. And it's like it's fun to see the way they, I've been out to practice a bunch of times, how they're out there interacting, how they're enjoying themselves. We talked about the coaches I played for. There'd be none of that, having fun, laughing, music, all that stuff that's going on now. And I love how, these coaches and players have adapted. Coaches that have to adapt to the players to get the most out of them. And Coach Mike McDaniel is that guy that knows how to motivate these players. Just think about one guy in Tua. Tua before, even in high school with his dad and the coach, obviously Nick Saban at Alabama, and then Coach Flores here, he had tough coaching, really, really tough coaching. Now you got a guy that understands how to motivate him. And look what the result has been, so far with Tua. It's been a much better quarterback, much more relaxed, out there getting a lot more better results on the football field. And so I love how Coach McDaniel can just relate to guys. They understand him, and he's just a current coach that is doing amazing things. And I think it's going to get bigger and better. This is only year one with Mike McDaniel. I can only imagine how the future is going to be with this coach.
The Dolphins were down by 21 3 weeks ago, and then come back, beat the Ravens. They've got a win over the Bills. Mike McDaniel's 39 years old, first year head coaching here. Do you think this player-friendly coaching style, do you think this is the future of the NFL? Do you think this is what team owners, GMs are going to be looking for whenever they're making transitions next season, getting more young guys like this, guys who can relate to the players?
I think it's working. I think it is working. You look at the rest of the league too, man. You look at, the young guys, McVays and all those guys that are out there that are doing things pretty much the same way, coming from that Shanahan tree, some of those guys that have learned to treat guys the right way, but also, understand where they're coming from. And I think it's definitely working. Everybody wants to get young because think about it. If you had older coaches, the style of football has changed so much today. These younger coaches know the RPO game. They know the motion stuff, and they know all this stuff that's current from college games, that's been, trickling into the pros now. You draft a guy in college that does one thing, and especially quarterbacks that run a certain system. You need to try to run that system in the pros if you want to be the same guy you saw in college. And I think these young guys understand that, and they're starting to adapt and make those transitions from, the college style of football to the pro style of football. And in order to do that, you can't teach some of those old dogs, those older coaches, those new tricks. These young guys can handle that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So for anyone that's not aware of the situation right now in Miami with Tua, briefly, last Sunday played a game. He got hit, came up, looked like he had some concussion symptoms, comes up, falls back down. They take him into the evaluation protocol. There's a neurologist who's there who's not affiliated with the Dolphins or the Bills. Check him out under concussion protocol. They clear him, say he's okay to go. I'm not a neurologist but this guy is, and he clears him and he comes back in the game and plays. Then they have another game, Thursday Night Football, 4 days later. Tua takes another hit and he's rigid. He's showing signs of concussion. And people were criticizing McDaniel, the Dolphins organization, for maybe letting him in, go back in so soon when he's showing these concussion symptoms. But the neurologist had cleared him. given what we've just talked about with Coach Mike McDaniel, it seems to me, and you know him better than I do, I'm obviously, but he seems like the guy to put the players first. And I do not think he would have put Tua in that situation if he did not truly believe that this neurologist cleared him and said that he was good to go. This neurologist was appointed by the NFL and, by a committee. This isn't some guy who doesn't have credentials. This guy was appointed to the NFL to be the person to check out concussion protocols and make sure players are all right to go. I just wanted to know what's your stance on this situation. And do people need to take a step back and think about, in hindsight, maybe Tua shouldn't have played, but in that moment,
Right.
if he's good
Michael,
to go, and you trust the, it's good to go.
That's such a great point, man. It really is, man. How many new doctors and lawyers did you realize after that situation, right, on Thursday? I mean, everybody became doctors and lawyers, man. Obviously there was something going on that Sunday night, that Sunday day hit, against Buffalo. And, here's the thing about it. There are different degrees of concussion. There really are. Tua did pass all of his tests. Now, here's the thing I always tell people, like, they say that, once a player is cleared, I'm going to tell you that the pressure on a head coach and players is unbelievable at times when there's injuries. A player is cleared by doctors. Does the coach say, all right, yeah, you're cleared by doctors, you're not going to play, even though you're cleared? Because imagine the other players that are lower on the totem pole that are cleared by doctors and coach still plays them and then they get hurt. Or if they're cleared by doctors and they said that the player decides not to play, that player won't be around. So here's the thing. If you're cleared by doctors as an NFL player, it's pretty much your job to go out there and play. It's pretty much the job of the head coach to play that player. And there should be no bias when it comes to those situations. So Mike McDaniel himself, is the head coach. When Bill Belichick is talking about the whole situation with Jones, with Mac Jones, he said, I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I'm not a doctor. The doctor's job is to do that part of the situation, part of the job, and you clear him or you don't. One or two. He's cleared to play. So now he's cleared to play. What is the head coach's job then at that point? To play his best player at that position. And so Mike McDaniel, who I love, look, we've got a tight end that's in protocol still, concussion protocol. Got hurt in preseason, and we're week 4 now. Week 5 coming up this week, and he's still in protocol, So that tells you how Mike feels about what the doctor's saying about certain situations like that, So unfairly treated is what I would say how Mike McDaniel's being.
Yes.
The man is honestly, I've grown to love him more and more every single day, not just from his quirky and funny and, very thoughtful interviews, but just his compassion for the players. And you can see the emotion in his face when they're talking about his integrity, when he's talking about Tua, when he walked Tua partway, down the field while he was on the stretcher. You can tell how he loves this kid, man, and how he loves his players in general. So nowhere in the world, in my opinion, would Mike McDaniel put any player in harm's way, especially a guy that I think he's closer to. I think he's probably closer to Tua than any other player on the football team.
Yeah.
They spend that much time together, and you can tell that his job at the beginning was to resurrect Tua's confidence. And he's done an amazing job of that. But more importantly, I think that friendship and that bond has made him more like family. So Mike McDaniel taking any heat for this, yeah, of course, in hindsight, you'll give him some heat right now. But in the big picture, no way. Not in my opinion. I think the fact that he did what he's supposed to do as a head coach, and they told him what was the truth in terms of, in clearing all the protocol. Mike McDaniel did what any head coach would do, is put his player out there, especially one that wants to play like Tua does.
Yeah, and I thought you were going to say that, and I agree 100%. That comment you said about Bill Belichick saying, look, I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I cannot give you Mac Jones return time. Same thing has been said here with Tua. Yeah. Mike McDaniel said, I'm not a neurologist. I'll turn to our specialists. And as he should, what do you want him to do? You want him to diagnose him and tell him?
Read film, right? They want to read the film, and you know what I mean? And it's so crazy to me, too, on top of that, Michael, is that all these other head coaches are being hypocrites about putting guys out there. They all put guys out there all the time. It cracks me up seeing some of these guys, especially ones that have been around for a while, that say, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. they're full of it. They all put guys out there all the time, and every time you suit up on Sunday, you're putting guys in harm's way. So, I mean, it's amazing to me that, especially some of these veteran head coaches that are coming out so hypocritical about Mike McDaniel's handling of the Tua situation.
Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about Mike McDaniel and his relationship with Tua, I mean, even when Mike was hired, I heard that he flew right away to see Tua. He talked to him on the phone and said, "Hey," and they developed that relationship right there. That's why there's no way that even on a personal level, you wouldn't put someone's in harm's way unless you truly didn't believe that they were in a dangerous situation.
Yeah, he also talked about, talking to Tua, and everything about Tua was exactly the same way it was. His mental capacity, giving him a 15-play call and him reciting the whole thing verbatim, different things that you would do to see if somebody's all about that, about their, their senses. And, the fact that they left the game with an ankle back report, but they still had him in protocol basically for testing all week until that Thursday game. I think the biggest thing about the Tua injury is if Sunday didn't happen, Thursday wouldn't be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
That's
if
exactly
Sunday
right.
never happened, Thursday would not be a problem. But since Sunday happened and everybody saw him wobble, then Thursday happened. Now it's a big deal. So when I'm looking at the whole thing, there are different guys that or different situations that are just not the same. You can't compare the two. But because of Sunday, Thursday became a bigger issue. Now he's on protocol. We know Teddy's going to be starting, and Skyler backing him up. But I mean, Tua, man, Tua was balling, man. That's the most unfortunate part about it, man. I think we found the Tua that they brought Mike McDaniel in here to find, and he'll be back. But as long as we just take our time getting him back, man, make sure he's healthy. And that's one thing I love about Mike as well. I call him Mike. I don't know why. Like we're personal friends. Coach McDaniel is that he's not worried about Tua in football. He's worried about Tua, the man, and what's going to, his health more importantly than anything. And that's what you got to love in a head coach.
Yeah, Tua, against the Baltimore Ravens, 469 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. I mean, what are we talking about here? This guy's clearly stepped up his game to a whole new level when he comes back, and he'll come back, take time, but, he's going to continue to ball out this season. Yeah. But as you mentioned, we got Teddy Bridgewater, and he's a veteran. He's going to be playing against the Jets this upcoming Sunday. How do you see that game going? What are the keys to win?
Jets are better than people think they are. Salah's doing a great job.
They beat my Steelers last week. Yeah. Absolutely crushed me.
Yeah. They're better than people think they are, man. They really are. And when you look at the schedule, you look at some of these we talked about the first 4 games the Dolphins had, New England at home, at the Ravens, you get Buffalo at home, then you're at Cincinnati on Thursday night. Those are the games that we were talking about, the gauntlet. Those are the ones that, okay, if we can get to 2-2, that'd be great. We thought we'd get to the Jets up there and we'd be okay. We can beat the Jets in New York. I don't feel as comfortable anymore, not just because of the Tua situation, but because of the way the Jets are playing football, how much they hate us, how much we hate them. It's always going to be a good game with the Jets, and they're playing some really, really good football. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup. Anytime you're on the road within the division, it's going to be tough. And I think that our guys be up for the task. But I think the best thing that happened to us was especially with Tua getting hurt, was that it happened on a Thursday. That it happened on a Thursday, getting 10 days before the next game, getting Teddy as many reps mentally and physically as possible, getting Skyler up to speed as a backup, and getting the rest of the guys' minds off of what happened to Tua onto the Jets. And I think that we should be ready. I mean, it's almost like a bye week when you think about it in terms of the amount of time you have to prepare for a game. So it should be our advantage, and we should be getting healthier along the way as well. But the Jets are no joke, and it's going to be a tough game up there, but it's one that we have to have. We have to go at least 4-2 within the division. We've already won 2 within the division. We have to get to 3-0 this weekend in the division, and then we can handle the rest moving forward.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I wanted to also talk about the Fish Tank. So that's your podcast that you have, Miami Dolphins, talk all about it, Tales from the Deep. How did that come about, and where can people listen to it?
Yeah, man, we're on every single platform you listen to your podcast. We're on the Miami Dolphin Network. podcast network, so you can actually look on any of their websites or whatever. But every single thing, Spotify, any way you listen to podcasts, we're there. It came about because my good friend Seth Levitt, who runs Jason Taylor's foundation, he's done so many amazing events for JT, but all the events that he does, he sits around, he hears these guys just chopping it up, talking about the good old days.
Yeah.
And he started thinking, he's one of the smartest dudes I've ever met in my life. He's like, man, that should be a podcast. That should be a podcast. And so that's when he called me and said, Juice, I've got an idea about a podcast. I said, man, I don't want to do a podcast. I do not want to do a podcast. He said, but listen to my idea first. And we started thinking about it. And all the guys that we know, and all the guys that are great storytellers, and all the guys that played for the Dolphins. And we just started, racking our brains. And right away, we had a list of like 30 guys we'd love to interview and listen to some of their stories. And so our podcast, as you know, is not about X's and O's. It's about, some anecdotes and funny stories and how they grew up. And, this rumors out there that and it's never anything to embarrass anybody. It's just a lot of fun, funny stuff that people might not know about some of these athletes, or not just former players, but guys from behind the scenes, head of security, equipment managers, ticket guys, whatever it might be. And their stories are just incredible, man. I just sit back and enjoy every minute of it, because it really brings me back. For me, I forget a lot of things that happened when I was playing, but when I have these guys on, it brings back a lot of really fun, good memories for us, man. So that's how it came about, man. So I give all the credit to Big Seth, as I call him.
Yeah, well, and the good thing is, too, you can listen to it, obviously, if you're a Miami Dolphins fan. But if you're not a Dolphins fan, if you just love NFL football and you like to get an inside for what it's like to be in the locker room, what it's like to be on the team and things like that, you can listen to it as well in early.
Yeah, that's a good point, Michael. Thank you for that. Yeah, exactly right. You don't have to be a Dolphin fan for that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, one of the last things I want to do is I want to do what I call 7 quick questions. It's 7 short answer questions. Can be what we talked about or not what we talked about, just to get to know you a little bit better. Sound good?
Sounds great.
What's your favorite movie?
Life.
Life. You're the second person, I think, in 3 weeks to say that. That's crazy. A lot of movies out there, and both like Life.
I've got a few, but Life, man, I probably because I was just talking about Life the other day, so it's probably why it's current in my brain right now. Yeah.
So, of the wide receivers in the NFL today, who are some of your favorites that are, obviously you're going to show a little bias towards Tyreek Hill. He's leading the NFL in receiving yards right now. Jalen Waddle's amazing too. But who are some other wide receivers in the NFL you really enjoy watching?
I enjoy it. I love the position so much, and there's so many really good ones. I'm biased towards Jahan Dotson, Penn Stater, who's up with the Commanders right now. But, man, we just talked about him too, man. Cooper Kupp, just a grinder, getting it done. Underestimated size and speed. I heard he almost got to 21 miles an hour the other day on his touchdown. So people think he's slow, but he's blowing by people and still getting open. But I just love his workmanship, his workman, the way he works and his mentality. So Cooper Kupp's one of my favorites.
We talked about how physical it is, the Jets against the Dolphins, big rivalry game right there. When you played, who were some of your favorite teams to play against?
Everybody in the AFC East, including the Colts. I still hate the Colts because they're not even in our division anymore, but I hate them. But, going to Buffalo is always a fun time. Playing in the Meadowlands against the Jets it was always a fun time. And beating any of those guys on the road was the best time. So, yeah, I love playing against Ty Law, Hall of Famer. It was tough, but it was fun,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talking about the fish tank, what are some of your favorite episodes? If somebody hasn't listened to it yet, what are some that you would recommend tuning in to listen to?
Oh, man. Any Channing Crowder story is amazing. Kim Bokamp we just had on was absolutely amazing. We've had some current guys with Tua. That was a lot of fun. Jalen Phillips, our defensive end, number 15, second-year guy out of Miami, was an incredible story from a guy that had the world by the tail and then faced some adversity and then came back to be, a top pick in the draft. But man, oh man, just the smartest kid and I call him kids like I talked about before, but he's 22 and he just gets it, man. In the community all the time, always giving back. When I was 22, I was trying to figure out where I can go on South Beach. This kid is actually in the community day in, day out, man. And so that's those are my favorites so far. There's a bunch of them though, man, but those are some that they could definitely check out.
Who are some guests you would like to have on to talk? Like, is there anybody in the horizon who you would like to have on, or you're
Yeah, we're still
Yeah.
trying to get 13, man. We're trying to get Danny's ass on there, man. You know what I mean? Maybe I don't know, man. He's been ducking us, man. But we've had so many guys on, and we're actually dropping Zonka, Larry Little, and Mercury Morris today. We're having that one on. We got those guys on. Why can't we get Marino on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll get him on. He promised to get on. His schedule's busy, so we'll figure it out.
Get him on for that Dolphins Steelers game. Get him on coming up to that game.
Oh man, that'd be a great week to have him on for sure.
Yeah, perfect. So we talked about the Dolphins predictions this season. How do you see the season ending up for them?
Well, I think our number one goal, obviously, and every goal every year is to win the division. So far, we're on track for that.
Yeah.
2-0 within the division. Hopefully, we get to 3-0. We got to get in the playoffs. Not only just get in the playoffs and get a win. I'm not just saying we're going to Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl, win the AFC, but we've got to start taking that step. We've been a game out of the playoffs for the last 2 or 3 years. Got to get into the playoffs, man. I mean, the team playing well. Usually, we don't start off this well. We won one last year, lost 7 straight.
Mm-hmm.
We won 7 or whatever, 7 out of 8. Missed the playoffs by a game. So good start is always important. We're off to a fast start. Now we have to maintain, and we have some games on the schedule that we should be favored in. Mm-hmm. You're favored in some games. You have to go in there and win them. So I count on us. Hopefully, getting to 11 wins. So that puts us at 11-6, getting into the playoffs, winning a division, having a home game. That's what I count on.
Yeah, that would be a great goal.
Yeah.
My last question, Super Bowl prediction. I've been asking this for everybody this week. Well, each person, I have on a week. Last question, I'm doing Super Bowl predictions. Right now, the last 2 have been Bills over Bucks and Bills over Packers. How do you see the Super Bowl going?
I've got Eagles over Bills.
Okay. Eagles.
I'll never give the Bills a win. I'll never, no matter what.
Yeah, you can't do that.
The Bills are going to win anything. They're going to be 0 for Super Bowl. That's for damn sure.
Okay, Eagles over Bills. Well, thank you so much for talking. Anything else you want to add here at the end?
No, man, it's been great, man. I appreciate it, man. And, like I said, we talked a little bit, man. Prayers for our people on the West Coast of Florida, Central Florida, man. A lot of devastation, man. It's unbelievable with the loss. And just can't imagine what they're going through. We've been through some hurricanes on the east side of Florida. It's a little different in terms of building code and the amount of loss over there. And I'm seeing the loss of life is starting to increase. Prayers for our people in Florida, man.
Thoughts and prayers, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, OJ. I appreciate it. Have a good one.